Hey kids, howdy, welcome. Once again, it's time for Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. It is the end of January. In fact, this episode is going to cover February 1st. And get ready, Zoe.
It's amping up?
Well, February is like the first, this sounds crazy to say. February would be the first month of the year that I would call a big month. And so that would mean that January was less big energetically. And so I will say that January shocked the shit out of me. It matched the astrology in terms of like the world stage and the personal stuff, right? That everybody was going through both. We're still in that. We're not going to be free of that personal planet, gathering experience, especially like this week with the full moon on February 1st. But it's also the month of eclipses. So it's our first eclipse season, and it's the month that Saturn and Neptune hit 0 degrees of Aries. But I get a little ahead of myself. We're not there yet. We're here to talk about the last week of January, starting the 26th today. But before we get to the astrology, let's have a question. This came actually from social media. Somebody reached out, Benjamin. Hey, Benjamin. Can I leave a question here for the podcast? They ask, is it valuable to reference previous transits? And then in parentheses, he puts Scorpio new moon in November at the end of Scorpio to other new moons as the aspect it would make to it. Like a new moon in Capricorn sextile that new moon that we had, as if it's like a better chance. So yes, in the lunar cycle, because they are like involved in this larger 19-degree cycle that centers on eclipses, but also is driven by the new moon, full moon rhythm, every new moon and full moon point becomes like a moment in consciousness that gets like stamped. The best way to understand this is when we start to think of time as illusory. Illusory. It's an illusion. Yeah. That means the solar system itself, the unfolding system that has the sun at the center, that is literally our identity in the galaxy. It's our galactic identity because we are that being as well as the earth and the moon, as well as us in bodies in the middle looking up. So like just as a moment in time has a sharp imprint because it might be the moment you took your first breath, and therefore, that moment is imprinted, whereas then every time you hit the solar cycle of that imprinting moment of your birth, you're in astrology that remembers the significant point. You get it? It's like your birthday. So that same idea would apply, just for the sake of the example, use new moons as the way we're going to talk about it, so we're not flipping back between new moons and full moons. So a new moon is a point of initiation that kicks off a new sort of bubble of energy, or wave of energy would be better. So that point, that in this case, the October 28-degree Libra initiation point, becomes something that the solar system will remember. And then over the next 20 years, as the points of the new moons begin to move through this thing, this Saros cycle, where they kind of descend in a very elegant order, there will come a time when the new moon later down the line will sextile, in Benjamin's example, the point that was triggered last October. Now, that'll be some division of 20 years, and I'm not doing the math now to figure it out, but you understand, like 4 years from now, I'm just making that up, there will be a new moon that will sextile these new moon points. And since the sextile is like productive energy, where you can grab two different energies, put them together, it's like a motor. And so, yes, that new moon 4 or 5 years from now could connect back to things that rise up now and have a direct relationship. Now, this can extend to other points as well. Big planetary conjunctions create a point. 22 degrees Capricorn is an imprinted point because that's where in January of 2020, Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter all met up and started off this crazy mess that we're still in now. Would you want to? That would be my question, that, astrology has this seduction where the math and the geometry of it all is just endless and endless with cycle upon cycle that all has meaning, but one can get lost in chasing this sort of structural meaning. So I would say if you're tracking a very specific sort of like line of action in your life over many years, this would be very valuable for you. Today's a very, very big day. Like literally today itself. Today is the day that Neptune is going to leave his ruling sign of Pisces for good, for now, moves into Aries, in earnest, touched in last year, but today's the day he moves in for the foreseeable future. He'll stay in Aries through like 2038. So what's that?
38, that's in 12 years.
I can't believe I have to count in my head like this, but I really do. 26, 36 plus 2, that's 12 years.
Quick math.
So that's 12 years. Yeah, no, I just have that hole in my brain. I mean, I'm a smart person, and then there's just like certain obvious things I can never like figure out. So in 2011 was when Neptune moved into Pisces, which was really interesting for me as a person who works in the world of dreams and dream interpretation, because Neptune rules dreams no matter what sign he's in, because it's the planet that we call the Great Spirit that connects us to everything that we receive through the unconscious, which includes the doorway between us and the unconscious, which is our dream life. I was doing a lot of work in the dream world during that switch over. In fact, the television show that I did on the Sci-Fi Network still had Neptune in what comes before Pisces.
There you go. I'm like, wait, I should know this. Okay.
Nah, you'd probably be able to figure it out with a little time. So when I was out in the world doing workshops and talks with Neptune in Aquarius, people were interested in dreams. They were fascinated. They came to workshops. They asked questions. But something changed after Neptune moved into Pisces. I watched it because it impacted me directly because of the archetypal connection to the very work I was doing on the planet. And questions at workshops started to get interesting and better and more sophisticated. I started to hear more and more people having precognitive dream experiences, even though it didn't run in their family.
What do you mean precognitive dream experiences?
Before Neptune moved into Pisces, if I met somebody who said, yes, I have dreams that come into reality, and that's precognitive dreaming, I never heard anybody say that who didn't also say, my mother and my grandmother can do this. Well, that's out the window. I hear people all the time have this experience without it having to be in their genes, because the consciousness on the planet changed when one big planet, Neptune, moved into a new sign. And it's a good example because it would increase things like dreams, dreaming, and the value and the draw to interpret them. Mm-hmm. So between 2011 and now, these 2 years, this placement of Neptune has impacted all of us in the collective, because outer planets do that. In some ways, Neptune is the planet out there that created that we have a collective, right? Because that's what he's, in charge of. And so your creative desires that have been brewing over the last 12 years can move out of the Piscean sense of this is the fertile soil in which we plant juicy seeds. And they go all the way in, because Pisces is taking those the roots, the seeds and the roots all the way down into the earth and watering them and feeding them. Aries is about action. So there can be all sorts of wonderful, positive, expansive experiences internally for us at the individual level to take advantage of what's happening, where last year we got a little hint of it, and this year we begin in earnest that inspiration, intuition, and flow, how we relate to the collective in general, and the style and sensation with which we would draw things out of the unconscious to put them into form, like ideas that then create the thing that we make. In Aries, it's like fired up, ready to move, ready to start, ready to put things out there in the world like a big shout of I am, after a very long period of gestation and holding by the Piscean collective itself. Now, the reason I am going on and on about the positive element of this shift is because this is also the thread of energy that is very connected to the war on the planet. Neptune carries our beliefs and our ideologies, the things that drive us from deep below the surface of consciousness. So hence, our drives, our beliefs. It's also, spiritual seeking is no different astrologically than deep religiosity, right? Everybody gets Neptune, whether the avatar is, Jesus Christ, or the avatar is, Great Mother, Great Father. That's obviously been misused by the folks that are on their way out. So because Saturn's going to Saturn's going to enter Aries and conjunct with Neptune next month at 0 Aries, the sign of war as a concept, because it's the first degree of the sign of clash and masculine appropriation. So on a global level, planetary level, all of the things that sort of brewed and grew and seemed to bubble over the last, bunch of weeks, today's movement signals that there's no going back to Pisces, there's no softening, there's no more opportunity to, as I've said for years, where I'm like, get your spiritual practice in gear, get your spiritual practice in gear. I started my class on spiritual practice deliberately before this ingress. In fact, if you want to join, you can just head over to michaellennox.com. We always keep registration open till the Tuesday after class starts, so you can catch up if you want to join us for that class. But I'm not pitching the class here. I'm saying I did that very deliberately to take advantage of the inspiration of the last decade, the spiritual musculature that any of you might have been developing, like the push-ups you've been doing, now become necessary. It's like we've been to boot camp and now we're getting our assignment. To not overuse the war imagery too much. But, I'm not going to shrink back from what is. This is a dastardly moment for the world stage, which is why I'm here, to get us all that is, those who I reach, getting us into a sense of, vigilance, resilience, spiritual support, a willingness to activate. This is an activating transit. Remember, beliefs and ideologies turned into action. Just make sure that action is in the service of peace for humanity so that we can get through all of this in one piece. The personal planet stellium is fully engaged in Aquarius now. Fully. And they're centered around, not symmetrically because of where they are now, but they're centered around Pluto in Aquarius. So in the same way that last cycle had us emphasizing the personal planets, sort of parading themselves through Capricorn, Saturn's sign of sort of marshaling discipline, responsibility, and focus, that was centered around the new moon in Capricorn, right? So that was the focus. Personal planets going through the integration of conjunction. In other words, when planets come together by conjunction, they are expressing some level of integration that we are experiencing. And so since that was all building in a Capricornian sense around the new moon, that was how we would understand that whole lunar cycle. Whereas we understand this whole lunar cycle as a function of the Plutonian transformations. Because now everybody has been cycling through and one by one hitting Pluto, going through what would really be like a little death and rebirth. Because my sister's a ceramicist, I sometimes think of that world for analogy. Capricorn is earthy. It was about making the clay of how we want to carry the burden, Capricorn, of life in the year that we're in. But once you're all structured and glazed and you don't look like much, you get thrown into the kiln. And in the kiln, the chemistry of the glaze and the chemistry of the clay, they die. And they are reborn into new molecular shapes. The clay becomes something bonded much more tightly, and the glaze dies to itself and is born as something unique, beautiful, never seen before, because glaze is loose and fluid and messy, and you can't replicate it. So there's some activity around this week that I want you to be aware of, and one of them is Mars-Pluto by conjunction perfecting tomorrow.
It's perfecting?
Oh, perfecting is the word for exact. Glad you asked, because so if I ever say that accidentally and I don't define it, perfecting means it's exact. So 3 degrees of Aquarius, perfecting tomorrow, is the planet of action and the body and anger and drive with the death and rebirth of Pluto. Now, if this were happening in a vacuum, each of the conjunctions with Pluto, Venus, Mercury, and Sun that have already happened, they'd be easier to understand and see or notice in your life, because there'd only be one area, mind, body, or heart, or spirit, that would be being, really put through the mill of change. But when it's one after another, after another, after another, you just have to think of the whole body of you being put through this kind of pressure to form into a new, unique Aquarian shape that's perfectly yours, only yours, and is interested in being of service. Could also make the week a little bit, intense with drive, anger, power struggles. Yeah, so just watch out today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Whatever you find yourself in a place where a fight might want to happen,
oh my God,
it will, unless you bring some kind of, softening agent.
I'm writing fights will happen.
Yeah. But it also signals the final one.
Okay.
So there's good news in that says as of tomorrow and then into Wednesday, we have this sense of we've been through something and it's over. Back to the kiln. It would be the kind of thing of the kiln's open. The thing that holds the stuff is taken out, but they're still hot as fuck and radiating for a little while. Right? So there might just be ways that last week brought, I'll just say general free-floating intensity, because that's, individual, that will have some measure of a release after Tuesday. Then on Thursday, Mercury and Venus come together by conjunction in Aquarius, 12 degrees. And that opens up a kind of sense-making moment where what we've been feeling in our emotional body and how we are now perceiving things and speaking of them and holding them in our mind's eye gets a kind of loving integration. Mars and Mercury have spent so much time together in the last few months. It's all been about walk and talk. So what I love about Thursday is now it's about getting our mind and our heart in the same place, which is absolutely crucial for effective manifestation and moving through the world, creating the desires that you hold with your mind, because you need your feeling body to be in the same room. So when Venus and Mercury are near each other, no matter what the sign, there's a better opportunity to have what we're thinking and speaking about, like, match what we're also feeling. And then in the sign of Aquarius, which is where these folk are all going to be in Sunday's full moon, is where we can like lift ourselves up into totally new and unique ways of expressing. That's the elegance of this traveling band of personal players moving through each sign. It's like Scorpio transformed and Sagittarius lifted to higher truth, and Capricorn helped us think of structures we need to build to support the idea that now we can create new ways of expressing ourselves, mind, body, feelings, and spirit. In an Aquarian, I can do anything because I'm a unicorn, and then offer all that in service to the world. I probably sound like a broken record to some of y'all when it comes to service. But really and truly, two things about that. One is that if we don't live lives of service collectively, then we don't have enough people, helping lift things up, right? There's so much consumption in our current sort of psyche that the act of serving, which, by the way, brings joy, is contra to that idea of capitalism and consumption. So there's value to the psyche of and the health of the collective when we are in service. It's also the most joyful way to live. In the cult of AA, the way that works, whether you want to be critical of AA or sing its, praises for how much recovery it has helped bring to people, it's about helping somebody less fortunate than you. That is, like, the air quotes, how it works. The idea there is the addict will eat and consume and take, and the way you heal from that is you stop eating and taking, and then you find somebody who's more miserable than you and help them.
You give back.
You give back, exactly. And outside of that little model, I don't know anybody who lives this way or understands this principle of how to even just perceive your life. You don't have to necessarily change how you're living to be of service. You can do that at your accounting job by just going in and finding the part of you that can say, I'm grateful for this employment and I'm going to serve, my community of employees by doing the best job I can. Contra to, get me through till 5 or 6 o'clock. And when I say live your life being of service, I don't mean taking it on like you've got to call the bulldozer and carve up plans to restructure your life. I'm talking about an attitude of perception that changes everything about how you move through life's challenges. Aquarius knows this. Aquarius invented it. And in this full moon, not only is the sun lighting up this idea of what the community wants, how is it expressing itself, and what the consciousness of that is, sun in Aquarius. Mercury's there, so it's about the perception of the world as a place you want to be of service. Venus is right behind, which means, remember, mind and heart are now in congruency. Mercury got the message from Venus and is now in front, but the heart is ready to step up and serve. And the kind of cooler, detached emotional body that Venus, gives us is perfect for service consciousness. Then we got the sun at 13 degrees. Mars follows at 7, just after his, death rebirth meeting with Pluto. And all of that really represents all of us as individuals, personal planets, and our power. See, that's what's important to understand this full moon, is to now we're going to personalize Pluto and not talk about the big changes out there. We can trust that that's also happening with every lunation. But having all of the personal planets in the same sign as Pluto and close by, him having met with each of them, over the last week and a half, means we are each filled with the most sense of personal power at our access that we can navigate for now, like that we could muster. I'm not saying that your personal power journey is dead and over. I mean that for this moment, this lunar cycle, these couple of months, this time as we enter this new year, we have each been stamped with Pluto's message, which says, hey, I know you think your power is lost in your underworld basement, and so that's why you keep looking for it outside in others, and then when you find it, you want to kill them. Your power is yours. It's right there in your gravitas places, and you know that now. And so we've got the conscious awareness portion of this full moon very engaged with this idea of what's my unique way? How do I serve the community? And how can I marshal every bit of me, mind, body, heart, and spirit to do so? Now, typically, when I'm talking about any lunation, full or new moon, I'm going to talk about all the sidebar geometry, all of the ways in which either the sun or the moon or both are impacted by other planets. But what's really interesting in this new moon is that's not really the case. The group in Aquarius is sort of kind of squaring Uranus, which is pretty rough conflict that is sudden and knocks you on your ass, but not nearly there in terms of even wide orb of influence. So it ain't there. I can't talk about it. There's a kind of sextile with Chiron, which means there's lovely healing possibilities nearby. But that sextile is far from being exact in this full moon, right? So we can't, there's no other things to really talk about. So now I'll flip down to what the moon is doing, because the story is really, really simple. Obviously, the moon is, the one big, the opposition from the moon is the one big thing that we can talk about from the moon's perspective. Mm-hmm. And that is also very simple. I've sort of overwhelmed you all with the service, integrate service, be unique, do it different. But in Leo, there's only the moon to contend with, and so we have a very simple sort of binary. Are you the person who hasn't been able to stand up into your centered self with confidence and ease? Then you need to drop and let go of some of your Leonian inhibition, right? So if centering yourself in what your gifts and talents are and being able to own them significantly in the world, then your job in this, full moon is to let go of the wallflower, shrinking violet, hesitant part of you. 'Cause, sorry, time's up. Join or perish. By the same token, Leo invented the arrogance and narcissism that we are trying to, dissolve and release from the planet. As someone who, vibes with that, I mean, I know my arrogance. I know that Leonian ego journey of letting go. It's been a lifelong, wild amount of work for me, but I'm here to tell you, when that Leonian energy is freed up from its narcissistic need to feed the self instead of the community, I'm a living proof that it's a spectacular way to live. Service is what did it. But in terms of the archetype for all of us, any softening that you might have to do around self-importance, arrogance and grandiosity itself, making choices that really are serving you, though you might be manipulating yourself into thinking it's of service for others, there won't be a lot of wiggle room for inauthenticity in the year ahead. So the message of the Leo moon is rise or balance your willingness to know what your gifts are and serve them with as much confidence is right for you, but maybe more than shrinking back because there's just no more room for all of us not to be knowing what we bring and then bringing it. remember too, a life of service in this way could literally be you don't leave your house and you spend a lot of time in prayer and thoughts of grace and peace, contemplations. You don't have to be doing something effortful to serve. You simply have to be orienting your perception, the things you have to offer, which can even just be, God forbid that I'm saying this like this, thoughts and prayers. But real thoughts and prayers contribute. So do that. When the full moon is exact on Sunday at 2:08 p.m., Neptune, of course, will be in Aries, not very far in, 9 minutes. That's like 9/60ths of a degree. And Saturn is still in Pisces at the end of the 29th degree. He's at 28:43. That means they are like Neptune is letting Saturn in to the gate of his estate. In this full moon. And about a week from now, they conjunct, and that's a big moment that we will talk about in earnest when it gets here. But you can think of them as absolutely conjunct now, even though the element is significant, that we're like on fire in one way, like, I've got these feelings and this fired up stuff, and Saturn in Pisces is still going to be like, throw some water on that, boy. So remember that is a message of, like, in the full moon itself, that there's this slight quality of let yourself feel fired up, but know that it's not quite time to take action in certain ways. And Saturn moving into, Aries will kind of take care of some of that for us, because we'll feel some kind of movement in that time frame. But the 13-degree, 3-minute Leo moon is sesquisquaring Neptune and Saturn. And it's pretty close to being exact. The orb of influence is 2 degrees. If you don't know what that means, it's like it's pretty close. It's not exact, but it's close enough to be meaningful in exactly the way we would interpret this if it were precisely exact. And the 135-degree angle is that geometry that can't, do anything. It's like a signal, right? Like, it's not going to break something or make something, but it's going to tell you where something's off. Like an itch. You know how when you have like an itch somewhere like in your back and first you have itch. Itch consciousness.
Yeah.
But then when you move into scratch it, you sort of have to go find it, right? I know that when I want a scratch and itch on my back, I go to the post over there and I back myself
Seriously.
in. But that process, it's like, it's not over here, it's over here. It's like in a different place than I knew or that I perceived, but I can find it and I can scratch it. That's the moon sesquisquaring Neptune and Saturn. So I'm because we always want to speak of aspects in a new moon or a full moon as sort of the imprint that will guide the rest of the lunar cycle, I would say this full moon has this message for us. The year ahead and time ahead needs the best of us. In fact, Aquarius sun says, I got that. I can awaken us to a higher level of consciousness to help us move through the year ahead. So what the moon is telling as the moon story is this sense of getting that itch scratched will be important, because for the full moon moment, that sort of itching with Neptune, who's on fire, that might be the itch of I've got to move, I've got to raise my voice, I'm ready to fight. But that same sesquisquare itch with Saturn in Pisces throws a little water on that for the moment and says, let this be a tea kettle, this analogy time. Let this be the tea kettle on your stove successfully boiling water for a cup of tea you might need to have later. And it also might make the weekend just a little bit edgy with, I don't quite know what's going on, sesquisquare Neptune, and oh God, I got blocked here and there, Sunday, sesquisquare to Saturn. So between now and the new moon in Aquarius at February the 17th, Saturn will move into Aries, and that conjunction will be just about to perfect itself. So that new moon has a kind of fiery shoot out the cannon, ready to rock and roll, with the Sun and Moon at an air sign and Saturn and Neptune in a fire sign. That's like a bonfire moment. And Venus will be exalted in Pisces conjunct the North Node exactly, which means we get both, which I think we're going to see a lot of this year, meaning we get both new moons and full moons that will support personal creativity and yummy expansion for the things we want to create at the individual level in our lives, while also watching the world just light more and more and more on fire. And so we're in a kind of dicey period of time right now because we are moving into eclipse season and these ingresses are ahead of us. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of what I want to present to you. We're just carrying you through Sunday's full moon. But I beg of you, spend time in that full moon really thinking about what do you have to let go of to step up more authentically, whether it's to fire up more or maybe a little less, and then put some effort into some kind of a ritual on Sunday. And I'll see you back here on Monday and we can talk about what's coming next. Have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a dream from Rebecca. She says, "Hello, Dr. Lennox. I'm a fan of your weekly podcasts and have had some troubling dreams lately. A few have had to do with being in large bodies of water in various dangerous situations, like I'm out in the middle of the ocean and the waves are too big, or I'm swimming in a polluted poison lake. I'm always with other people, such as friends or my ex, and we always make it out alive. Last night, I had a dream that my friend and I were walking in a clear valley, and all of a sudden, we're surrounded by 3 bears, and they start chasing after us. They're very fast, and we're very slow, but they don't get us. Then we turn around, and there's a rhino charging straight for us. Once again, we're slow, but it eventually passed by us and charged towards the bears. We think we're safe, but my friend says there's a pack of wolves starting at us. And when we turn, they start
honey, you gotta go home,
It's a lot going
honey. You're not safe.
And when we turn, they start to run. I woke up at that point. I am alive in all of these dreams and don't die, but I wake up very suddenly with a lot of anxiety and the thought of, what the heck was that? They also always wake me up between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m. If you could please explain the meaning of these dreams, I would appreciate it. So I know water, emotional self, something's wrong in the emotional self because they're dangerous water situations.
Correct, dangerous.
But she's fine.
Well, but she's also having these interactions with what is ultimately terrifying ideas of like animal attack.
I'm like, the beginning makes sense to me, and then...
Right. It's like, okay, well, what's the dream about then? Is it about dangerous emotional territory where she sinks in and the waves are too big or it's polluted and she makes it out? Or is it about this other thing? So one thing I want to start with is the idea that all dreams that include animal symbols are medicine dreams.
Right.
So this is a dream of Rebecca's sort of inner medicine of the moment.
We have bear medicine, rhino medicine. Actually,
bear,
we've never
rhino,
talked
wolf.
about rhinos.
No, please. I don't even know if that would be in my book. But rhinos charge, and they're sort of enormous looking, which gives them, this is both hippos and rhinoceroses, these big sort of lumbering animals that are ultimately fast and can charge. A rhino, has that possibility. So let's start with the waves and the water energy. So we do know that the theme is emotional life, yes, but specifically things that feel dangerous in, the world of deep emotions. Even the idea of waves too big, like that's just a symbol of emotions that are rocking and sort of a little overwhelming, right? So that's a very sort of obvious, interpretive, emotional sort of context to put on the waves. Pollution is another sort of context that, well, this water, this emotionality is, I'm going to say, toxic from past events, because that's true of both sort of trauma and pollution, right? Traumas came from earlier events. Our emotional processing is something we learn in our, family of origin. So pollution is the impact of lots of little sort of dirtinesses added over time, right? It's not all of a sudden it's a filthy environment. Little by little pollution grows. Little by little toxicity grows. Where's it held? It's held often in our emotional body. The emotional body will shut down around the memory of old traumas. So coming out of the grip of that and floating to the surface could be like, oh my God, these waves are too big now that I'm exploring emotional territory. Similarly, this is, an area where toxicity is specifically. And of course, she always makes it out alive because we're just processing feelings as we go, and they often feel deadly. Hell, I remember a decade from like 15 to 25 where I thought if I ever really opened up to my sadness that I would die.
Yeah.
Because I was shut down emotionally. My emotional body was sort of like turned off by my childhood experience. Anyway, back to Rebecca. Who's she in the Clear Valley with?
That my friend and I, so maybe one friend.
Okay, so we don't have any information about the friend for me to work with, but Rebecca, if you're listening, that friend is resource, right? Helpful. If you know the person, then their qualities are the qualities that the dreams are calling you into. And if you don't, you can just sort of say, there's a part of me that's with me that knows what I don't know. I mean, we don't know if that's true or not. We're going to hope that they know something. One thing that popped out at me that I don't know how strongly I feel about this, but I'm going to mention it because this sort of takes us away from medicine consciousness. If the emotional body is where things live that sort of can jump up, including our fearful thoughts that are not based on actual danger, like fight or flight responses, where something triggers us into great sort of danger, anxious consciousness. And so each of these visits with what is ultimately helpful medicine information, there's built into this, the resistance piece. I'm running away. It's kind of like that thing where you're being chased, but you don't realize they've got your keys. Now, I don't know if the bear or the rhino or the wolves have Rebecca's keys, but I do know that in the landscape of dreams, how I see it through decades of experience and what makes sense to me is that they are always for us.
Right.
So the bear and the rhino and the wolves have to be for Rebecca's benefit. And the running away, I would I would posit is reflecting the defensiveness of not quite being ready to turn around and look at your various power that has greater strength than the fear pieces. But that's what dreams are helping us do. Like, that's not a pathologizing of Rebecca. This is a dream where Rebecca's working through some of the resistance of, so what? Bear. Bear is the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself. Like when you see a bear just ambling through, you know not to fuck with that bear.
Right.
Because the bear can run and charge. So there's a dangerousness to the power. But from a medicine place, they represent power that Rebecca owns because the bear is in her dream. And it's the part of her that is ipso facto powerful just by being alive and in a body, but also the part that knows when it's time to rest, when it's time to retreat. Hibernation and then return is a bear consciousness as well. So it's always about strength and power, but it's also about cycles of when to step into strength and when to step into rest. Great medicine to have. I had to look rhino up. Right. And again, I don't know if I wrote it about rhino in my dictionary, and I'm not going to go look because I'd be embarrassed if I haven't. But I think I didn't because this doesn't seem familiar to me. One thing that's interesting as I'm sort of looking on the greatest dream dictionary ever, Google, is that there's a lot connected to rhino and medicine consciousness. You know, that the horns and the keratin actually has some sort of healing properties in, Chinese medicine. There's a connection to wound care with rhino energy, which is not something I've ever known or would even have thought, because I would go first to that sort of strength and danger piece. And if you scroll down a little bit more on Google here, it does sort of talk about spiritual concepts of strength and overcoming obstacles through inner magic, right? So that's some great power as well. And then the power of wolves is the power of community, feminine process, the idea of changeability through the wolf association with moons and the lunar cycle. So wolves are a very feminine expression of power that's also reflected as groups that share power, right? I mean, bear and bear families, yeah, they're a thing, but I think in the world of medicine, I've never thought of bear as, bears and cubs in dens. I think of it as bear. Rhino, same thing, a masculine kind of energy, and wolves are deeply, profoundly feminine. And they connect us to the wisdom of nighttime and the shadow and the moon. So I could even sort of make a case for, the bear energy doesn't work because it's only available in real danger. The rhino energy is just so overwhelming. It's like, tone it down. And then the third one that showed up is like the Goldilocks one, in that, just right for a woman dreaming about power, moving through, opening up her emotional body for more expression. Who knows more about emotional feminine expression than the nighttime, the moon, and the pack of wolves that are such beautiful medicine?
I'm writing down, my takeaway from this is inner power in our dreams, the various ways it comes.
Oh, absolutely. It's a dream. I think that's Rebecca is dreaming of opening up the emotional body through the exploration of scary emotional material, right? We know that she's going down there. And in those explorations, finding various aspects of her personal power, including the strength but restfulness, and the power of the rhino, and the sensitivity of the wolf consciousness. It's increasing the support that Rebecca is experiencing on the journey, but through the invisible, that can only be really deeply connected to when our emotional bodies are clean.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.